De'Aaron Fox just put on one of the most special performances that I've ever seen from a Kings player, and just unfortunately, it came in a loss. The Kings needed every single one of the points that he scored, all 60 of them, and that still wasn't enough. I'm not necessarily mad about a loss in this one. I didn't think coming in that we were going to win this game. This is not a game we were favored in or anything like that with DeMar DeRozan and Malik Monk out. Everything fell onto De'Aaron Fox in terms of scoring the ball, and he responded. And so I'm only mad for him that he dropped 60 and he couldn't get enough help for it to not be in a loss. Like, that sucks. He carried us back in that second half. He was just getting to wherever he wanted on the floor every single time. It was right at the rim, right at the rim. It's not like he was making tough shot after tough shot. He wasn't taking many threes. He wasn't taking many long mid-rangers. He started doing that late in the game when he was super gassed and he couldn't get inside anymore. But it was all right at the rim or going to his floater. And we saw a little bit of that against Phoenix, and he absolutely carried that forward. Every once in a while, Fox will just go on these runs, run a form where he can't be stopped. It feels like that's what we're in right now with him. And the Kings had a very good shot late in this game. Obviously, they were down like 20 in the second half, but they were up 4 very late in this game. And I think when they look back, they're going to regret one sequence where they were up 4, clock's on their side, they have the ball, they push it in transition, Keegan has an open look. He doesn't take it, and that's fine because you're up, the clock is your friend, you want to run clock. He hadn't been shooting necessarily very well, so he passes it up. I think somebody else had a decent look, but then it goes out to Trey Lyles, who just jacks a 3. And it just wasn't a good attempt because we should have been running clock and getting the ball to De'Aaron Fox in that moment. And then on the other end, Anthony Edwards has the ball. There's kind of like a weird exchange out on the perimeter, and the Kings just didn't look like they were matching up. Like, they weren't getting out to Anthony Edwards. Kevin Huerter wasn't getting in front of him. It was just felt like the Kings were kind of standing around on the perimeter, and that allowed Anthony Edwards to get inside and get an and one. And so it felt like the situational awareness. It almost felt like the Kings thought the score was flipped, where they're trying to score quickly and they weren't worried that the Timberwolves were going to attack right away. They thought like the Wolves were going to burn clock so they didn't have to get in front of them quickly. So I think they'll look back at that sequence and then they go down, miss again. Anthony Edwards gets another and one. But I feel like that's when the Kings had the best chance of this game. Once it went to overtime, it felt very unlikely that the Kings were going to win just because you could see how gassed Fox was. And he still scored 6 points in the overtime, both on 3-pointers. But he wasn't able to finish inside and he wasn't able to get much help outside of that. Near the end of the third quarter, I kind of accepted that this was going to be a loss. And I was like, okay, I just want either the Kings to make a big run here or the Timberwolves to go on a big run. Because either, we have the second night of a back-to-back tomorrow. So I'm like, either we need to go for this win or we need to rest our guys. And they went for the win. Nobody gave up. So especially Fox, massive respect for that. Because I was going to accept a loss because this was not a game that I thought we were going to win. And coming into this homestand, I was like, just win one out of the ones against Phoenix and Minnesota, which they did against Phoenix. And then you just win the other 2 against Utah and Atlanta, and you're good. And so that's why I wasn't, too worried. I think the coaching staff in this game, they took some risks. They didn't work out, and then they didn't pull the plug on them quick enough. And so I think when you look at why we were in the hole that we were in, I really do blame the coaching staff because obviously with DeMar out, with Malik Monk out, scoring might be tough. And they took some risks. And I'm not necessarily mad at starting Alex Len, but I just felt like in the first half, it's like it didn't go necessarily horribly, but it wasn't great. And it definitely didn't feel like we should start the second half with Alex Len. They went to it again, and the Timberwolves go on a 12-0 run. Another example is the zone defense the Kings were running out. The Kings have been awful in zone all season, except for one game against Miami where it worked. It just feels like whenever the Kings go zone, they don't know how to play in a zone, and they look confused every single time. and the other team always gets good looks. And it kind of felt like they went to a zone because the Timberwolves were knocking down some tough threes. And so immediately the Kings go zone, Timberwolves throw it to Mike Conley on the wing where he had already made one, and Keegan doesn't get out to contest. And it feels like that happens every single time the Kings go to zone. And they just kept going zone time after time after time, and it wasn't working at all. And so that's another example, I feel like, of the coaching staff not pulling out of that quick enough. And then the third example of the coaching staff sticking to their guns was keeping Kevin Huerter in late in this game. I didn't understand it. I was fine when Fox needed a breather. You have Kevin Huerter in. You need someone to score. It was down to him and Keegan, both of whom didn't have the best games offensively. We needed one of them to step up. Kevin Huerter takes a mid-ranger, makes it great. But late in this game, we needed Keon Ellis. Even if we kept Kevin Huerter out there, I wasn't even necessarily going to be mad, but it's the fact that Keon wasn't in the game. If Keon comes in for Trey Lyles, I would have been okay with it. But Keon just had to be in the game for one of Lyles or Huerter just because of how the matchups work out. We couldn't contain Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle at the same time if you don't have Keon Ellis on the floor. And so I think in that sequence where Anthony Edwards got 2 and 1s in a row, I think that's something that Keon definitely could have helped with. And then at the start of overtime, the same thing. I don't understand why Keon wasn't in the game. And again, eventually the coaching staff was like, okay, we need Keon in the game. And they eventually went to him. So I just thought the coaching staff had a very poor game trying to adapt to having Malik and DeMar both out, because it felt like the players gave it everything, and especially Fox, obviously. And it felt like the coaching staff didn't give them a chance. I'm not usually this critical of the coaching staff, but I thought they had a super poor game because there were only a few moments where the Kings really allowed the Timberwolves to go on big runs. And both of them were when Alex Len was in the game with that starting unit. Again, it wasn't necessarily the worst to start out with. You had Len sometimes on Gobert, sometimes on Randle. They kind of tried it both ways, I think, because Sabonis picked up a quick foul on Randle. That was his only foul of the game. But the offense, it just looked a bit janky, a bit out of sync, and that's not necessarily unexpected, but Fox was kind of carrying it early on. The Timberwolves were hitting some tough shots. Anthony Edwards hit a ton of contested jumpers. I don't understand why he loves playing here. He always says he loves playing here. I wish he didn't. But at least we didn't have Julius Randle going 5 for 5 from 3 in this one. But the Timberwolves, they knocked down tough shots in the first half. The Kings ended up down 8 at halftime. And I was pretty much fine with how the Kings had played because, again, in terms of the players, they were doing everything they could to kind of deal with the weird lineups that we were kind of putting out there. Alex Len was sitting in the corner a lot of times, but it was a combination of the Wolves hitting tough shots. I think of their first 10 shots, I counted 5 of them were contested tough threes. Also the officiating, maybe not the best, but it was going to have to kind of be an ugly game, and the Kings were trying to make it that way. They were blitzing Anthony Edwards a lot. It was leaving a lot open on the backside. And then you obviously had the zones, which I already talked about, which weren't good. But the Kings bench came in, made a positive impact. You had McLaughlin coming in, taking a charge. I felt like he made a really positive impact. Lyles wasn't knocking down his threes, but he still made a positive impact, played 41 minutes. Obviously a big player to step up with DeMar DeRozan out. Keon, wish he could have done more offensively like I normally do, but very good defensive game from him. And then Doug McDermott finally came in and hit some threes, which was good to see. And despite a pretty bad first quarter, at least it felt bad, the Kings were within 2 until Julius Randle hit that fadeaway buzzer beater. And I felt like the Kings, even in the second quarter, they were playing the right way to try to stay in the game, and they were just getting outshot from 3. I liked the way most guys were aggressive offensively because they knew that other guys had to step up other than Fox. Keegan, he was aggressive offensively. It just wasn't working for him necessarily today. He had 14 points. Huerter was the one, well, maybe there were 2 guys. Huerter was one of the guys that I needed to be more aggressive, and he wasn't. and he ended up with 4 points, and I didn't think his defense was very good in this game. Keon Ellis, the other guy that wasn't aggressive, but when you look at everyone else, J-Mac, Doug McDermott, Trey Lyles, they were all aggressive offensively, taking what was given to them. Sabonis was as well, of course, and the difference was the 3-point line in that first half. One thing we saw in the first half was Sabonis get the ball out on the perimeter and Rudy Gobert closing out on him, because that's kind of the respect that Sabonis has gained. Maybe the scouting report is changing, and Sabonis drives by him and draws a foul on Gobert there. So that was interesting to see, and we'll see if things like that continue, because Sabonis doesn't necessarily need a lot of space when it's bigs closing out on him, because he's faster than a lot of bigs. So if they just take that extra step, he can punish by going to the rim, and so I really liked seeing that from him. Fox, he needs to stop with the turnovers up top at the end of quarters. Like, this is the one criticism of this entire game. At the end of the second quarter, and he's done it all season, where he just turns the ball over, and it's always with him being at the top, and so he turns it over, the other team gets a dunk every time, and so it's always a big swing at the end of a quarter. He did that again at the end of the second, but other than that, obviously his 21 points trying to keep us in it. And then you have the start of the third quarter, where the Kings offense, super ugly. They were just throwing the ball away at times. I think the Kings had used a lot of timeouts in the first half, didn't have a lot of timeouts, so Mike Brown didn't want to use one. Again, they went to another zone, and Mike Conley was killing us. And so the start of the third quarter was the one time in this game where I was actually very frustrated. Once the Kings started to kind of get in their flow offensively, once they took Alex Len out, they were starting to score, so they were able to keep it below 20, but they were really struggling to keep the dribble penetration out for the Wolves. But they were getting great looks, and they weren't necessarily knocking all of them down. But Sabonis, he was finding cutters. Doug McDermott was doing a great job with his movement off the ball, getting open, whether it was for something under the basket or getting open from three. We definitely could have gotten a lot closer at the end of the third. I think Anthony Edwards was out then, and you had some open looks for Keegan, Keon, McDermott that they missed. But the process was there. It just took getting that starting lineup out. Again, I understand what they were going for with Alex Len, trying to combat Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle, having Sabonis guard Randle a lot of times because he is capable of it, and you don't want to put Keegan on Randle because they aren't confident enough to put Keon on Anthony Edwards, because Anthony Edwards is just stronger than Keon, and we saw Keon struggle with Booker at times. So I understand the thinking, but it didn't work in the first half. Don't know why they went back to it. But then with Anthony Edwards out at the start of the fourth, obviously it was just De'Aaron Fox takeover, getting wherever he wants, just an absolute masterpiece. I just love watching Fox do this. And this is why people get frustrated with Fox. It's because we know he can play like this. Obviously, he's not going to play quite like this every night, but we know what happens when he's able to get downhill and when he's taking the right shots. When Fox is fresh, when he has the energy to be able to get downhill, he's just an unstoppable scorer. And it's things like this is why I have faith in him in big moments, like in the playoffs, because I think when you get to that point, like, he's able to just push himself more and more. Because I really do think it is just an energy thing for him. And it's why it can be so frustrating to watch him just jack three-pointer after three-pointer, because we've seen so many times what it's like when he's able to get inside like this, and it's just so fun to watch. On the defensive side of things, the Kings were getting great contests at the rim. They forced some turnovers. Fox was predicting passes, seeing them before they were thrown, got some huge steals, and converted on the other end, which is huge. But then he was just too gassed. McLaughlin had drew a big foul, knocked down the free throws, and then Herter, when Fox went out, knocked down a big one. Then Herter didn't grab a rebound, which was very frustrating when Fox was out, but the Kings were able to stay right in it with Fox out, just give him the little break that he needs. And then they had that rough sequence where Lyles misses the three. There's 2-and-1s for Ant. Fox responded with about 40 seconds left with a big bucket to tie it. And then we had the Kings get a stop. Keon grabs the ball, and I don't know what happened there. Like, obviously they should just be calling timeout. Apparently Like, I heard that Mike Brown was calling a timeout. I didn't see it, so I don't know if we got screwed there. Could they have called a foul? I don't know. It seemed weak, but we were definitely not getting a friendly whistle in this game, so would have been nice to just get one there. But it seemed like we should have gotten a timeout there. And obviously, then we would have had an opportunity, and with Fox, where he only has to do something on one possession to win the game, I would have been very confident, especially with the way the Kings have been executing down the stretch on like final plays. They've gotten three massive putbacks. So even if he misses, you had Sabonis against Toronto, Sabonis against Miami, and Keegan against Phoenix. All putbacks to either tie or take the lead with very little time. But unfortunately, we didn't get to see that opportunity, and that really sucks because then I didn't feel confident going into overtime because there's just no help for Fox in terms of handling the ball and creating something. This was just a game where we needed something from Kevin Huerter, and he couldn't give anything, and we needed, if not him, then we needed something from Keegan Murray. Or, well, we got something, but like we needed more from him to be more efficient offensively. We just needed somebody to help on the perimeter offensively. Sabonis had some nice moments of scoring inside, but we know when it comes down the stretch of games, he's going to be the one setting the screens. He's not going to be the one creating the offense as much down the stretch of games. That's just not how he's utilized. And then the Wolves, I mean, they knocked down threes in overtime. Anthony Edwards hit some very tough shots, obviously. So it's a tough loss. I don't know how to feel about it, because if the Kings had gotten blown out, I would have been like, it's fine. We go next. Let's go against Utah and Atlanta. Get those 2 wins. Have a 3-1 homestand. So I don't know if it's better. Like, obviously, I'm very happy to have seen a Fox 60-point game, but it sucks that it was in a loss. Now we went to overtime, and we have to play on the second night of a back-to-back. It just, they felt like they needed this one with having the next one on a back-to-back. Is Fox going to be able to do anything near this tomorrow? Like, he's going to be so out of gas. We need DeMar to play tomorrow because it's rough. Because this was kind of end of last season type of offense where it's all on Fox. When Monk was out, when Herter was out, we brought in DeMar, so it's like, okay, we have a little more leeway. Monk could get injured and we'd still be fine. But it's like, of course, Monk and DeMar are both out injured at the same time. And I feel like right now we have a bunch of guys that are contributing positively, but they're just not scoring as much. Last game they did, but just this season as a whole, at least lately, it's been a lot of, Trey Lyles, he's making positive plays, and so is J-Mac and Keon, but it's like we need some more bench scoring. Kevin Huerter as well, although less so this game, I felt like. Keegan's the same. I mean, obviously we're asking him to go guard Anthony Edwards. It's a tough assignment. He definitely got beat a few times, but he had his fair share of wins. And like I said, Ant hit some tough shots. You need the help to be there sometimes, and because he's going to get beat sometimes. That's just how it is, especially when Ant's knocking down the jumper like he was. And the help did not do a great job down the stretch of this game of preventing him from getting all the way to the rim and obviously fouling him. And if you're going to foul him, foul him. But they allowed those and ones. So just a tough loss here. Just looking at Fox's line, 44 minutes, 22 for 35, 6 for 10 from 3, 10 for 11 from the free throw line. He had added in 7 assists, 3 steals for 60 points. He did have 6 turnovers, but you can live with that when you go for 60 and 7 assists. When the ball is in your hands that much, yeah, you're going to turn the ball over sometimes. It was just one of those moments where he obviously was dominating all game, and then once he got gassed and couldn't get inside, he needed the jumper to be falling, and it was. And it was just like a miracle when he hit those 2 threes in overtime. Keegan also banked one in, and the Kings still couldn't come out. I mean, that accounted for 9 of their points in overtime. And yeah, it's a franchise record. I was surprised when I saw how few 50-point games there'd been in the Sacramento era. Also, Fox's career high of 44 always seemed low. He was just one of those guys that never had the massive explosion. He had 44 3 times. I think SGA is kind of similar, where his career high is like mid 40s. and you just don't expect that. And so it feels better that Fox now has well, it would have been fine at a 50 piece, but then obviously a 60 piece here. We needed him to step up, and that's exactly what he did. And I just want to know what would have happened if they would have given us that timeout with Keon in the corner. And also, what is with us getting screwed trying to get the ball and falling out of bounds? Because we had the Lyles saving it against Phoenix and the shot clock resetting, saying we had possession, but they were never going to give us a timeout. So it's like, that's not possession. And then this one, where we do have possession and they still don't give us a timeout and we turn it over. We're not getting good luck on falling out of bounds in our own half. We can go through some individuals though. Obviously I already said Fox. Sabonis got injured for a second in this game. He was out for a few minutes. Maybe those could have been crucial minutes, another what if. But he was 10 for 15, 0 for 3 from 3. Had a chance at one at the end of overtime to bring us within one. And we still had a timeout. So if he would have hit that, we would have had a chance. But, I thought he had a solid game. Again, he had another moment where he tried to post Gobert with a bunch of dribbles and he turned it over again. And I was just like, come on, man. I thought we learned from this after the 7 turnover performance. But other than those turnovers, solid game, 23 points, 12 rebounds, 3 blocks. He was asked to constantly blitz Anthony Edwards on these screens and then recover. He was just running a lot this game. But he did his part. Keegan with 45 guarding Anthony Edwards, 6 for 15 from the field, 2 for 7 from 3. Ended up with 14 points, 10 rebounds. Another double-double for him. It was a solid game from him. Again, that the shot not totally falling, but I did like the aggressiveness. He was solid on Ant. Definitely not perfect, but I'll take this performance when he's being asked to guard Ant and then sometimes guard Julius Randle as well. Like that, very tough matchups for him. Alex Len started, played 9 minutes, and didn't do too much. Took one corner 3, missed it. It's just wild to me how Mike Brown and his coaching staff, they're just so ready to give guys that aren't in the regular rotation shots in the starting lineup. They did it last season, and it worked very well with Keon Ellis coming in against the Rockets when Fox was out and starting after he hadn't been in the rotation. We did it with Doug McDermott earlier. Now we do it with Alex Len. It didn't work out this time. So yeah, I think double big lineups are possible, but I don't think Alex Len is really your guy to do it with. And I think it's really only a move out of desperation going forward. Herter, 31 minutes, really bad game for him. 2 for 7 from the field, 4 points. Just needed more from him. And he wasn't aggressive enough off the dribble. I don't think he defended very well. Just wasn't staying in front of guys at all. I thought definitely one of his worst games of the season. And I just don't know why he was playing so much down the stretch. And then I mainly already talked about the bench. We just needed a little more offense from somewhere else. Because I liked the games from Trey Lyles, Doug McDermott, Jordan McLaughlin, and Keon Ellis. I liked all of their games. We just needed a little more offense. Whether that was Doug McDermott going 4 for 4 from 3 instead of 2 for 4. Lyles hitting 2 more threes. Keon hitting a couple more threes, right? We just needed a little more. We ended up going 12 for 37 from 3 in this game. I thought we were going to end up taking more, but because Fox took over with the scoring so much and he was doing so much inside, it ended up not being the case. But the Kings were taking a lot of threes earlier in this game, and I felt like that's how the Kings needed to play to be in this game. Obviously, I didn't foresee that Fox would have 60, so that changed things. But the Kings, they just got outshot. 20 for 49 for the T-Wolves from deep, 12 for 37 from the Kings. To the few people, I didn't see a lot, but a few people were like, yeah, DeMar DeRozan is the guy messing with the spacing. He's the reason we're not shooting well from 3. I just feel like people who came in being like, oh, DeMar's going to mess with the spacing. There were, again, not a lot of people, but a few people. When he went out, and then, the team has a good 3-point shooting game. It's like, no, that was definitely just a coincidence because here we are back to our old ways. Because we got a lot of the same shots that the Timberwolves did, and they just didn't go down at the same rate. And that's been the story all season. and I don't know if that's going to change. Hopefully it at least goes up a little bit. I think we're always going to, not always, but I think this season we're just definitely going to be outshot from the 3-point line. We just need a little bit more help from there. Moving on to the next games. It is Utah. It is Atlanta. The Kings are 3 games into this 5-game stretch, and they're 1-2. If you want to go 3-2 on every 5-game stretch, well, they now need to win these next 2 games, and they're favorable games at home against Utah and against Atlanta. Utah just recently got their first home win against the Mavericks, but their offense just doesn't look good to me. And the Kings held them to 96 points when they played in Utah earlier this season. And I think their offense just revolves a lot around like Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, Keontae George, just trying to create something off the dribble and jacking up some shots or trying to get downhill, but it usually doesn't work out because those guys just aren't first options. And so the Kings should be better when it comes to keeping Utah out of the paint than they were today against the Timberwolves. John Collins has been playing very well, so definitely need to keep an eye on him. But it's going to be interesting to see if the Kings can get their energy up there. 3-3 at home so far this season. You can't be below 500. Hopefully we see a lot of Keon minutes because he didn't play that many minutes in this game, so he should be fresh. And who knows, maybe DeMar will be good to go. I don't know. But the Kings were able to easily pick apart Utah's defense in the last game. Sabonis should have a big game, hopefully, against a pretty poor Utah front line defensively. Some other interesting news, Orlando Robinson played his first game with Stockton tonight. I don't know how that went. I haven't checked in. But so, maybe a little help is on the way. See if we can get anything from Orlando Robinson. He should be up with the team fairly soon. But yeah, anyways, that is it for this episode of the Real Report. Thank you, as always, to the members for supporting this channel in No Rain and Joe Mama. And I will see you guys in the next one tomorrow. Peace.